Sit back and throw one back with your pinky in the air and a middle finger to the world, and join me, the eclectic gentleman Stephen Watts, as we look back on this day in pro wrestling history. But before we do, put that drink down, like, share, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get our wrestling history on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is November 26th, and we're going to start off as we always do on a positive note. That's right, these are your pro wrestling birthdays. 1958, luchador legend El Tejano. 1961, the vivacious Ivory. 1966, primetime Brian Lee. And last but not least, 1976, the first Tough Enough winner, Maven. Of course, on the flip side of that coin, your pro wrestling deaths for November 26th. 2015, the patriarch of the Gilbert wrestling family, Tommy Gilbert. All right, enough of the sad stuff. It's time to get to the meat and potatoes. That's right, these are your pro wrestling history highlights for November 26th. Jumping in the Wayback Machine and going all the way to 1942, where we see Ed Strangler Lewis defeat Orville Brown for the Midwest Wrestling Association version of the World Heavyweight title in Kansas City, Kansas. This was a rematch following a bout where Lewis beat Brown on November 5th. Groovin' to 1960, Al Castello and Roy Heffernan defeat Johnny Valentine and Chief Bigheart for the United States Tag Team titles, which was a forerunner for the WWF Tag Team titles. Grabbing my boombox and going to the year 1981, Mid-South Wrestling ran the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, with a main event of Mid-South Wrestling Tag Team Champions Junkyard Dog and Mike George defeating Paul Orndorff and Bob Orton. 6 years later, in 1987, the first and only head-to-head pay-per-view war between the WWF and NWA Jim Crockett Promotions takes place, as the very first Survivor Series goes one-on-one against the 5th annual Starrcade. Grabbing my flannel and going to the decade of grunge, 1994. 3 days after winning the WWF title from Bret Hart, Bob Backlund loses the title in Madison Square Garden in New York City to Diesel, who turned babyface 3 days earlier at Survivor Series. That next year, in 1995, after 4 years of running shows, Smoky Mountain Wrestling held its final event, Thanksgiving Thunder, in Cookeville, Tennessee. The promotion, ran by Jim Cornette, was very reminiscent of old-school territory wrestling, taping TV once a month and then running a loop of house shows in the same Kentucky-Tennessee market. At the close of the final show, all the wrestlers attacked Jim Cornette, hitting him with their finishing maneuvers and laying him out in the ring. Referee Mark Curtis, the late Brian Hildebrand, who was Cornette's right-hand man in running Smoky Mountain Wrestling, then fittingly pinned Cornette while the wrestlers counted 3, ending Smoky Mountain Wrestling forever. And last but not least, staying in 1995, WCW's World War III pay-per-view took place at the Scope in Norfolk, Virginia, with a main event of Randy Savage winning the 60-man 3-ring World War III Battle Royal. Those were your super short but sweet pro wrestling history highlights for November 26th. I'm the eclectic gentleman Stephen Watts, and we'll see you tomorrow.